Welcome to the February 6th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Concord Historical Commission. We are conducting this meeting online in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The public may access this call through both telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask presenters questions and provide public comments on topics and discussions following the presentations. To do so, please raise your hand in the participant function of the Zoom meeting platform. I will call on each commissioner for comments on a topic and then open the meeting for public comment. Once there are no more public comments, I will ask for a motion from the commission to vote on the applications. At this time, I would ask for a roll call from the commission members to make sure we have a quorum. And we can start with Michael Capizzi.
Aye.
Doug.
Present.
Melissa.
Present.
Lauren.
Here.
Nancy Frisella-Lee.
Here.
And myself, Alan Bogosian. So the meeting, I call the meeting to order. We have a couple of things on the agenda for tonight. I think everyone has seen them. So we can start right off talking about the Minuteman National Historical Park, the Great American Outdoors, the Act Signage Package 2. Is the presenter here? Is that Margie?
Good evening. Yes, I'm representing Minuteman National Historical Park for this.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Margie Brown from Minuteman National Historical Park. And what I'd like to give you this evening is an update on our comprehensive sign replacement project. This is phase 2. Phase 1 is already complete and the signs are installed. And the really focus of this notification is the archaeological compliance associated with either sign replacement or proposed new signs. Now, that being said, we are working with a contractor to design the signs. And the contractor has had some difficulty scoping the size of the signs correctly. And so that resulted in us having to create several buckets for the sign project. And one of the submittals was a table. And in that table, the buckets are numbered 1 through 7. So the bucket that is most relevant to our discussion is number 3, because those are signs that are proposed that are in the right of way or outside of the park. And so, unfortunately, the designs were not to our liking, but because of the way the contract is worded, we had to advance those to the town and provide comments. So of course our comments were the signs are too big, inappropriate. We are now in the process of extending the contract so that we can refocus our discussion on what would be the appropriate signs in the town of Concord. And so that's kind of a separate discussion, though, from our purpose here. Our purpose here is to review the archaeological proposal that was sent. This was a copy to the town of Concord, but it was sent to the State Historic Preservation Office to review the whole package. So I think there was one specific question I wanted to address with the table. We talked a little bit about the buckets and what each color represents is at the end of the table. But there's also the letter E, which is in the shovel test pit column. And there's also N and Y, which are a little more self-explanatory. Yes, being shovel test pits are needed prior to installing or replacing the sign. N is no shovel test pits needed at this time. And E is representing evaluate, meaning that there needs to be further evaluation of the appropriateness of the sign and its location and its size. So many of the no's aren't necessarily that we don't need shovel test pits. It's just that we don't have the ideal sign designed yet. And so we're not ready to have an archaeologist go out and test the soil. So yeah, and here's the table. So I think that for our discussion this evening, there actually aren't that many signs that we need to talk about because of the issue that we're having with the need to redesign and look more closely at many of the signs in our submittal. That being said, we do need to move the contract forward for the many signs that are included in this comprehensive sign replacement, hence the need to submit this package to the State Historic Preservation Office and the tribal preservation officers. With that, questions?
Ann? Ann Clifford? There you go.
So Margie and I talked a bit today. I still have some questions about the various buckets. You know, bucket 3 was supposed to be Town of Concord land and 6 was supposed to be within the park. But
Can you speak up, Anne?
sorry, a lot of the items in bucket 6, which are supposed to be within the park, actually seem to be on the right of way, and some of the notes say that they will require Town of Concord and local historic district commission review. So I'm wondering if, you know, we should be looking at both 3 and 6.
Okay.
And it seems as if 6 has a lot of the yes marks next to it. The 3s typically don't.
Okay, so for example, Barrett Farm, we'll take a look at that. So on page 1, our Barrett Farm parking, private drive, and Barrett Farm side road.
Margie?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I know Melissa has her hand up. I almost feel like we need to look at the spreadsheet and the aerial at the same time. But maybe everybody else feels they know exactly
No,
where these
No.
are.
No.
But for me, I keep wanting to look
Right.
at the aerial photograph that and then tie it to the number, right, on the spreadsheet.
I mean, that's kind of
Melissa,
the
go
genesis
ahead.
of my question is, Margie, how does this represent a lot of new signage or is this replacement only? I mean, there are a lot of signs and I I kind of drive around and try in my head to remember. It's just, I think, remember, I know when we first saw this, some of the signs were just huge, and that was an easy thing to say, whoa, too big. Now, is a lot of lists, and as Lauren points out, would be easier for us to evaluate if we kind of knew where they visually better where they are. And again, is this primarily to replace what already exists and update and whatever or are they some of them new?
And that, Margie, and that was my question as well. It's what is the total number of signs, and how many are going to replace the old signs, and the ones that are too large, what is that total number?
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't have those numbers handy, but these are things that I can figure out. So total number of signs, and whether they're replacement or new. And I was trying to kind of distill, because this is park-wide, I have another table going, which is just Concord. And so this provides a little more clarity on each sign in terms of whether it's new, whether it's in the state right away, or whether it's in the town right away. And I think the challenge in going to the table that you have is that it was really built by the archaeological team. And so it doesn't provide answers to your questions. But this table that I've been working on and recently updated with some alternate sign sizes has more of the information that we need to talk about. I did drop this off at the town offices today, and it's been a little challenging to distribute those location maps electronically because they put aerial photographs as a base layer. So, but I can get that electronically to everybody. So
We have the location plans.
okay, so
We got that as a file.
okay, and there's about 22 of them in Concord.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and Margie, are they new? Are they just replacement? You know, in general terms, just
Well, so I'll give you an example. Barrett, any sign that refers to the Barrett House, those are all new.
new.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it has been undersigned, clearly. Yeah.
Any of the signs in the Monument Square area were intended to be replacement signs.
Okay.
But the signs right now, I measured the letters, so they're the letters on the current sign in Monument Square are 2 3/8 in height. And there's been a real effort to create signs with 4-inch height letters, but you can imagine that those signs can get quite large. And so I think one of the conversations we need to have is how small can we make those letters so that we have a sign that doesn't detract from the historic landscape?
Yep.
Is it 3 inches? And so I do have a useful calculator that I got from the sign design group. And they basically, you know, if the letters are this size, the sign is this big. If you reduce them, then you can reduce the sign to a certain size. So we're working on getting some of those signs that are in really visible locations, but also, you know, where you want to be able to look around the sign, making those smaller. Jen,
So
any kind of wayfinding sign, the letters are 4 inches.
So the other thing just brings to mind, Monument Square, anything around there, of course, you need to go to the HDC. So, because we don't have any jurisdiction over Monument Square.
Yeah. And we're not ready to do that yet because we're uncomfortable with the signs. What I hope to do now that I have more information from the sign design group is to schedule a meeting with the town next week to see if we've made some headway on the sign size and the layout. The sign designer did things like where it says parking ahead, just a symbol for parking because most people know what that means. And that greatly reduces the size of the sign. So you can imagine Barrett Farm, just a P. It's a little simpler. And the one thing I'll say about Barrett Farm, because that is a collection of new signs, is we had been in the process of acquiring the adjacent parcel, the Giddings property. They were interested sellers at the time that the Barrett Farm unit was designated, and so their property was included in the legislated boundary. We have now acquired that property from the Giddings, so that will influence how we sign that site. We have been trying not to sign it so that people would drive up Mike McGrath's driveway. And so that's just an example of a change since we talked last.
So not that we when you meet with the town, is that with the engineering department or is that with the?
Yes, town engineering, town planning, and ultimately with both the Historic Commission and the Historic Districts Commission. I don't think we'll be able to meet with everybody next week, but really hoping to meet with engineering and planning.
Okay. And how long do you think it will take to get the final design of the signs that were too large or?
Well, the Harper's Ferry Center did kind of step in and mock up the signs. So we might be very close. So just as an example, they had proposed a sign that was, 50 inches, and now just by redesigning it, it's down to 30 inches.
Right.
So we're making headway.
Yeah.
But I don't have a great report. But I think what going back to what you're reviewing at this time, the shovel test pits, the archaeology for the signs, it is not our intent to put the cart before the horse on this project. We just needed to move that archaeological component of the comprehensive sign project into the review phase, just because we have to keep all these components of the project moving forward.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's been challenging that the contractor had put in all these oversized signs.
Right. Lauren?
Yeah, thanks, Margie, for all this. Wow, it's a big project. I have a question about what I think we're here to talk about, which is really the cover letter, right? And that defines the archaeological study, is that right? And then the table and the location maps are sort of supporting materials that explain the details. That's how I understand it. I had a question about whether or not, planning and engineering and HGC were going to be reviewing this too. So thanks for answering that question for me. But I had one question about the fact that the archaeological consultant will be evaluating any potentially eligible properties, it sounds like, as a result of this study. And that is interesting because that relates in many ways to this preservation plan that the town is working on right now. And I just wondered, this is sort of a question to the commission, are there any potential, it's just going to be potentially eligible archaeological sites. Is that correct, Margie? You're not going to be looking at any potential cultural landscapes or historic structures or, because that's really my question. And would that include properties that are not within the park, but are within the area of effect where the signs are going?
And is that, I didn't read all the bullets under the archaeological survey. Is this one of what the surveyor will be asked to do?
I think so. It did say, let me see if I can find it. It says the results will be compiled in a final report that also outlines clear recommendations as to the potential eligibility of resources encountered during the project and future research. And so is that just archaeological resources, or is that all historic resources? Because, I think potential information on, that's very interesting for us, I think.
Yeah, I mean, because it's solely focusing on the archaeology, I interpret that as, let's say they find something that's very significant. Like, they found musket balls in one of the other studies.
Yeah.
That would be an example where that would result in a recommendation to, and this is conveyed to the State Historic Preservation Office, that this site should be further evaluated for its significance.
Right.
Another example was when we were testing for septic systems with this larger project. They found both musket balls and a projectile point. And so this resulted in a halting of the septic project. It was just taken off the table. There would be no rehabilitation of a 20th century house and a septic update because of the significance of the findings. So in some ways, I think there's some boilerplate language in here.
Yeah.
The likelihood of finding that something that significant with shovel test pits for signs is maybe minimal. We're doing a leaching field. They did a whole grid.
Yeah, got it. So that, I think the bottom line is it's really archaeological resources that they're looking at, not, bigger properties. Okay.
Right. And very targeted. In most locations, it'll only be 1 or 2 shovel test pits.
Got it.
Likelihood of them being able to make some in-depth conclusions is quite minimal.
And that's even for those sites that are, say, within a town right of way and not within the park, correct?
Yeah, and I think in that case, what we're quite likely to find is that we're putting the signs in highly disturbed soil
Yeah,
as the right of way is
right.
possibly was part of the development of the road base.
Yeah.
But not always. So there's no assumption, oh, this is disturbed because, for example, there was a water line break along 2A, and when they went in to repair that water line, we could see the old stone walls
Mm.
were subsurface. So this obviously won't be as an extent that was digging that was done with heavy equipment. This would all be hand digging, but you just never know what you're going to find
Yeah.
in this area.
Great, thanks.
I just have a question. So that when you're talking about the septic, digging for the septic and you discovered musket balls and a projectile point, will a report on this be made available more widely? It sounds pretty exciting stuff. I think people, when you announced the 5 musket balls or whatever earlier this year was big news,
Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes we keep those reports. They typically have a big confidential across the top.
yeah.
Just to so people don't get all excited about going out and digging. But if there were interest in the report, purely to kind of see how the methodology came together, then that is something that we can share among professionals.
Nancy Fasali? You're muted.
I think that we've heard about that before, that finding, and maybe that property was in Lincoln. Not that it matters, but I think I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not Concord, right?
So we don't care.
We don't care.
Well, in Concord,
Very interesting, yeah.
found the musket balls by the North Bridge, and that was
I know that. Yeah, but I thought that the other one, Flint and they found it in
Yeah.
Lincoln.
yes. Yeah. And we then went on to do a much more extensive study of the area. It's referred to as Bloody Angle, but that's a later name. So it's Elmbrook Hill. And that whole archaeological project hasn't really been released all of the information because we're still studying the findings. But that turned out to be a very significant project. Right on the Concord line.
Lauren?
And interestingly, in that area, Elmbrook Hill, Bloody Angle, there could be much more studying on the Concord side of Elmbrook.
Lauren, did you have a?
Yeah, I just had another thought, and that is, and this is also to the commission, since I'm a new member, to what degree does this affect the scenic road considerations? Certainly the cover letter mentions, National Register properties, but we also have local historic districts and a scenic road. And it would seem to me that considerations in the historic districts and the scenic road would, in terms of aesthetics in particular, would be important. That's maybe a Melissa question.
Yeah, well, I would hope, I'm sorry, Nancy Nelson isn't on, but, because we did battle with the Department of Transportation for a while. I know that Simone is still, I'm sure, working on that, because we have opposed the plans that the DOT is, and with the federal highway, the so-called resurfacing. So I think any additional archaeological findings bolster our objection to their designs.
That's
And
important.
what about aesthetic consideration, the kind of visual impact of signs in
Well, that's kind of why I was asking, are these mostly replacement? Are they
I see.
new? Because, you know, we have signage all along 2A, the Battle Road, which has been acceptable for some time. And if that's basically a replacement, I personally don't see an objection.
It'd be in the same footprint if it's a replacement.
Yeah. You know, the issue we had was what the Department of Transportation had, you know, these these islands and flashing lights and marked crosswalks and a really very disturbing uh, redesign of 2A Battle Road rather than acknowledging it as a historic all-American road, which it has been designated.
Yes, and to that point, this sign project does not include any of those standard DOT signs. So we're not talking about stop signs or do not enter signs or speed signs. The focus of this project is really solely on information for our visitors.
Mhm.
And what we're not really delving into here are some signs that will go within the park that will help people know where they are along the Battle Road Trail. But if anyone's interested in looking at what we're thinking about, I have all that as well.
Well, the only new one, Margie, is that when you come from Lexington, or come over 128 into the park in Lexington, that's a very tasteful sign, that the brand new sign that was just done
Oh, yes.
in
Yeah,
Lexington.
that's phase one.
Right, that's a very nice, good looking sign there.
Well, thank you. It is pretty big, but you know, there you have it. That's a kind of a part of the park in itself. People love those gateways. That's a gateway sign.
Right.
Um,
I've already noticed people taking their picture
there
in
you.
front of it.
Hopefully, they're not parking along 2A. Are they going over to the parking lot?
Yeah, they're going in the parking lot, yeah.
So the other potential new signs in Concord are those for eastbound travelers. So all of the current wayfinding signs on the highways are on 95 or Route 2 westbound. And so we incorporated into the sign plan potential new signs for eastbound travelers. And whether those actually get installed is not critical at this time, solely designing them, because to install them, it's a whole nother contract, a fabrication and installation, and also everything on Route 2 goes through Mass DOT. So I do, you know, going back to your question of are these replacement signs or are they new signs? Anything that has to do with Barrett Farm is new. Everything that is for eastbound travelers on Route 2 is new. Other than that, the focus was on replacing existing signs, but many of those existing signs have fallen down or fallen into disrepair.
Right. So,
Michael?
yeah, so let me ask a question. As I remember, Superintendent Monteleone has a historic preservation degree from UPenn. And knowing her as I do, I know that she's passionate about historic preservation. However, my sense, and I don't have all the specifics based on what you're saying, is that it seems to me that as this contract project was initiated and now under implementation, wouldn't it have made sense, unless it's already been done, and I understand we're talking 3 towns, but I know the building inspector in Lexington. I know the full staff in Lincoln. I lived there 23 years. And certainly our people here in Concord. Wouldn't it make sense, unless it's already been done, to set up a site visit with somebody from the three communities or individually and just take a walk? It takes a little while, take a walk and look at what is being replaced and or what is new, where it may be going. I know I can tell that the amount of, I think I've been traveling on those roads for almost 50 years. So I think I know about how many signs there are. So it seems to me these are a lot more signs that are there. So wouldn't it make sense before everything is designed and then sent to different boards and commissions in towns, that you at least do a site visit either individually or collectively, just to say, okay, this is what we're planning and this is what we're going to be designing and submitting to you, so that at least there's a single point of contact or two that can communicate with the different boards in the towns to let them know what's coming before them, so people aren't then voting on something or not voting on something that to support what you may be doing at this point. Wouldn't that make sense? Unless it's already been done. But it doesn't sound like it's been done.
Well, so there's these two phases. So
Right.
one, we definitely communicated with each town.
But I don't think, I know you communicated you putting signs in, but was there a site visit with somebody from any of the towns to go for a walk and show you where the signs are going before these documents are submitted?
Yeah, I don't recall anyone requesting that or an interest in that, but I'd certainly be interested in it if people would like to.
Well, it would seem to me that if you are, that's good. So that's the park. So now somebody in the town should go for a walk with you or a drive and look and see what's being planned. And at least at that point, because maybe someone is going to say, oh, geez, no, we don't think this is a great idea. And let's talk about it rather than, because it seems to me, what is your time frame here? The 250th is coming up soon.
And that's why we broke
I
it into
know.
two phases. We have no intention of doing the comprehensive sign replacement in advance of April. And
Oh, okay.
it's pretty clear
Right.
From the Harpers Ferry Sign Center.
Right.
Look, there's a lot of signs here.
Right.
You pick the ones that you really want to get in before April. Those have
Right.
all been installed, and now we're going through this second phase, and there's a lot of signs.
Right.
My guess is the first phase would be just the direct replacements.
Well, I would suggest that you talk to Simone and tell her, I or the commission mentioned this, and if it hasn't been done, it might be a nice idea. And if she doesn't think so, then great. If the town doesn't think so, then great. At least, to get an understanding of, what, because that's a lot of signs. That is one
Yeah.
heck of a lot of signs. I can tell you that.
You know who you'd be going on the walk with. So I'm happy to do it.
Good.
It's a little chilly now.
Well,
Pick a sunny day.
yeah, Ann Clifford, if you're on this, maybe you want to mention this to somebody in the planning department of the town and go for a walk or go for a drive.
Right, we are planning to meet with Margie to go over the drawings again. We had gone over with her, what was it? I don't know, maybe last spring or something,
Right.
and they've evolved since then. And we had said, right, that there were far too many. There were concerns about sending traffic through, residential neighborhoods.
Right.
And so
And that was stated to who? Simone or this fine
Margie.
person? Who?
to Margie.
Oh, okay. But it sounds like there's still a lot of signs going up.
Well, we need to meet with her again.
Okay.
The town folks, the engineers and planning division needs to meet with her.
Okay, so it sounds like that's under control. Great.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, this package came in from the park about archaeology, and so you know, just to.
This
keep
is more
going.
just information at this
Okay.
time.
Keep
Great.
going.
Okay, and I don't think there's there's no action required by the historical commission at this point. Correct, Ann? As this is just information.
Yeah, because there's,
I don't think it's ready to be reviewed because it's,
oh, sorry.
I don't think it's quite ready to be reviewed since
Right.
Ricky and I spoke today that, you know, the two charts don't quite coincide and there are lots of questions about property lines, whether something's in the right of way or whether it's in the park. And as I mentioned, that bucket 6, you know, a lot of those do seem as if they're in the right of way and not in the park. And those are the ones that are proposed for test pits.
Okay.
So,
My homework is to look at bucket 6 and see what's in there, where is it? Also bucket 3, I think we were attempting to put things in bucket 3 that needed further work. Set up a meeting, hopefully next week. And then set up a site walk when it's a little bit warmer. And then resubmit to both the Historical Commission and the Historic Districts Commission once we have a clearer path forward.
Great.
sounds good.
Okay, and if you have any other questions, do feel free to reach out and we will want them to be nice signs.
Yeah.
Because we got to drive by every day, right?
Lauren?
Yeah, just a quick question. Just because I'm thinking about this in the context of our historic preservation plan, because it's, you know, anytime you gather new information, it's really interesting. What's your time frame, Margie?
Well, just trying to do everything as quickly as possible because we're doing a modification on the design contract. But
Yeah.
basically, as soon as we can wrap this up, we're going to move into that fabrication and install contract.
Yep.
It's perfectly okay to design a sign and not fabricate it or install it. But the money that we're working with, we're not going to see money like this again anytime soon. This money was set aside in 2019. This is Great American Outdoors Act Legacy Restoration Fund dollars.
Yeah.
So we want to get as much as we can with that funding, but we want it to be of high quality.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Margie. We look forward to the next get together.
Yes, and I really hope I have some better looking signs for you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next up, MCI Concord. And Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, but you and I went and sat in on a meeting. This was it 2 weeks ago or
Yeah.
at this point? And everything was great and hunky-dory, and we got endorsed by Dan Gainsborough. So we thought, and we were just there to offer assistance and whatever help we could. And then things kind of took a turn for the worse. And I know there was a meeting a couple days after that, or the next meeting that they had. And that's as far as I went. I haven't been up to speed on what happened at the other meeting. So
I think that for the commission, the upshot really was that I was surprised actually, but I understood where they were coming from.
What happened?
Well, we went to the land use subcommittee meeting because we had written a letter to ask that a member of the Alan had sent a letter asking that a member of the historical commission be a kind of not informal liaison and so forth. And their perspective was, Dan was all in favor, made a motion, but then the conversation ensued and several members of the committee objected because they felt there were really, correct me if I'm wrong, Ellen, two main reasons. The first is that it set a precedent for other special interests, right? Whether it be housing or traffic, et cetera, right?
Or any other committee.
Any other committee, right? And then the second issue that it really relates is that they are under
Mhm.
an extraordinarily challenging, I'm picking my words, time schedule.
Right.
Unbelievable.
They were on the hamster wheel.
Yeah. And I think I get it. They were worried. I think this made them nervous that the historical commission was going to get in there. They started to ask questions. Well, does this mean that the historical commission can talk to our consultant, et cetera, et cetera? So we just tried to be, low key, positive. They were here to support you and to help you. And if questions come up related to historic resources, we're here to help take that off your plate. And so I think it ended it was a friendly conversation, but it was sort of thank you, no thank you. And it does raise in my mind the question of, because, the point being that their meetings are public meetings. We can always go and participate and offer our feedback. But it is going to mean that we're going to have to be, on top of things and proactive, and their meeting that was scheduled for this week, I think, was canceled.
Mhm.
And I do worry. I'm going to just say one more thing. I see Melissa's hand up. I do worry a little bit about the time frame because they are hiring a consultant team to do a conceptual plan for MCI that will give the MCI committee enough information to draft a new zoning bylaw. And there are a lot of pieces to that. And it has to be done by the end of the fiscal year.
And we want to make sure our historically significant assets get included in that report as well.
Yeah.
So my question is to Lauren and Alan, did they acknowledge that the Mass Historical Commission is a player in this? They are supposed to be consulted officially. I'm pretty sure that's in the language.
I think it's interesting. I had a little bit of I asked Anne some questions about the degree to which, because I'm new, I don't have all the background, but I read the scope, the RFP for the study that the MCI Concord committee has, the RFP they've released. And, it does reference historic resources, and some material was attached, but what concerned me was that they were relying on information that in some cases was, 50 years old and not current.
Mhm.
And if you don't, considering how much, how much preservation changes and how our feeling about historic context and what constitutes something that's significant changes over time, it worried me a little bit that the sources were so, in my mind, out of date. And there was nothing in the scope of work that would allow for any updating of material. So, and in fact, that was one of the questions that the potential consultants asked was, is any additional historical research required? And they answered no.
Well, so I have a question, Alan, do you remember, or both of you, whether Linda Miller is a part of this land use?
She is, and she was
Linda
one
was
of the
there,
ones
yeah.
who objected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Objected to you?
Yes,
What?
yes.
Oh, no, wait, that sort of blows my mind because she
Yeah.
came up to me personally and said, you guys need to be involved.
No.
I don't get it. I'm
Yeah, as I said, I was surprised. Yeah, and it was all about this notion of precedent setting
Right.
and opening the door for others to get their hands in. I think these guys are just really under a lot of pressure.
And there's supposed to be a meeting
Study done.
today. Wasn't there supposed to be a meeting today? Weren't they supposed to
Think-
pick some people today, I thought, or
Yes, right, because I think they have to,
they have to
Right.
whittle it down, I thought. I thought they
Yeah.
could whittle it down,
yeah,
the selection process.
right,
So the only real supporter was Dan.
yeah. Who Alan and I both know very well, and I think, we've worked with him,
Right.
and so,
Well, it's very puzzling to me.
yeah,
If it's okay with you, Alan, I will send an email to Linda. I mean, she couldn't have been more strong in saying you guys need to be at the table, and that she said she herself recommended that they put in something like $50,000 into their budget to for some kind of historical assessment of some sort. I don't, it's a little bit undefined, but that's why I think I talked to you, Alan, about it, and I've talked to Ann about it, and
And we were very low key. We just kind of sat there.
sure you were. Yeah, you're not a threat.
I mean, I work, we had a similar process in Belmont for the McLean Hospital redevelopment, went on for years. And it was a similar it wasn't a DCAM, but it was a big institution that essentially let their, was being redeveloped. And same concept where they had a consultant do a master plan, and then that's what drove the rezoning of the property. So it's very similar, and it took a lot of work to work out all of the details. But many more historic properties, in some ways more, a little different, but it took a long time.
I think their main concern right now, Melissa, that I think it was 35 proposals they had to.
Well, there were 44 firms
Right.
that requested the RFP. However, I looked at the list, and I knew about a third of the firms, and I looked up a few others. And I think what will happen is that will come way down, because a lot of them will team up with each other, right? There were economists, there were natural resource, there's sustainability people, there's some big engineering firms.
Okay.
And there'll be a prime consultant and a lot of subs.
So,
Interesting.
So I think it's going to mean we're going to have, we're going to just have to be on the ball.
right.
And nobody's going to feed it to us. We're going to have to extract the information, and there'll be very short turnarounds for review. And
Yep.
yeah,
So that's the latest.
yeah.
Any questions, insight, comments? Okay. Moving on.
There was also the business development presentation last Wednesday. And there was also, along with that, a lot of discussion of MCI Concord in terms of the big push on expanding the corporate tax base.
Yeah, right.
So, and where are there opportunities to do that? And
Yeah.
they're not saying MCI Concord, but they're painting a picture around MCI Concord.
Right. Right.
Right. Then there's that whole other DCAM. What are they going to decide to do with the land? So,
Yeah.
okay. Moving on to the historic preservation plan. Just for an update. Anne, do you want to?
Sure. Okay, so I've been in touch with Jen. Oh, well, obviously, you all know we've been meeting just about every Friday morning to look over the recommendations, and there's another meeting tomorrow morning, just, working sessions to sort of keep this project moving along. Because, we've been getting, as you all know, these long drafts from the consultants, and we're trying to sort of, force them to boil it down, distill it, analyze it, and give us something that's really useful for the town of Concord. So we're going to be meeting with Mass Historical Commission next Tuesday. I just heard from Jen Doherty, who's our contact, that she's actually going to be leaving, sadly, Mass Historical Commission.
Yeah.
I know. So Michael Steinitz will be the new contact person. He's been there for a long time and really knows his stuff.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Jen is moving on to a consulting company. So I'm wondering whether there's some way we could keep her involved.
Interesting.
We could pursue that
Did
possibly.
she say who she was going to work for?
Gosh, she did. It starts with a B. Battle or something.
There's an architect in Concord named Battle.
John Battle.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it. Sorry.
She's been so great as an ally for us on this.
Oh, she has been great. I think they were in Sandwich, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But and so she had provided some feedback that let's just see. Oh, I don't see it. All right, well, she had provided some feedback on on sort of where we are. And the most important one was that that the consultants should really scrap the idea of volume 2. So, I was really thrilled to hear that because, getting volume 1, the core piece down to something that's readable is going to be a huge hassle. And to have to deal with whole second volume, I think it's just not something we're interested in. That's not what we thought we were getting, right? And that's not what Mass Historical Commission thought they were getting either. So that will be helpful. She said that, right, that they should focus really on the text for now, not graphics or call outs or any of that other business. Let's see, there, we had shared some model plans, so she's gonna reinforce that, not necessarily for the recommendations, but just for their tone, right?
Mhm.
And their conciseness. So I thought that would be helpful. Right, and they're looking to us for feedback on the recommendations, which we're working on. And let's see. Oh, right, and the other one was that, just in terms of organization, to keep the recommendations all in one section so that they're easy to reference and they're not lost, among all the other words.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we still all kind of have some work cut out for us, but
Yeah.
and I guess what's good about all this conversation with MCI Concord is that I've really decided to try to take a deep look at what has been done and what the status is with that project, because that will help the commission with this whole plan for all of Concord. And it does seem as if West Concord seems to really be the priority at this point.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking as a West Concordian,
Right.
yes, please help.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even totally clear to me until like the last week that 2013 study of West Concord, they had sort of outlined like 5 tiers of priorities, and they accomplished priority 1, which was like 76 buildings, but no one has done anything since, really. So priority 2, 3, 4, and 5, we've got our work cut out for us. But it was lined up in 2013, so there is some sort of framework. We
Yeah.
might need to look at that again, especially now that MCI Concord is in the picture, and
Yeah.
yeah. But we can talk more about this tomorrow.
But-
Yeah, and the Massachusetts, Communities Act, right?
Right. Can we
Area.
get some boilerplate from that? Can we get boilerplate from that 2013 plan? Can we look at some of that tomorrow?
It's huge, by the way. It's
Right,
can-
so it took me a while to figure out what they were actually trying to say.
it is, I found they have a huge, it's in the Fowler Library, has the whole documentation of it there. I went and looked at it and I just was overwhelmed. So Anne, I hand it to you to decipher.
I started drafting I took a block of time this week on Wednesday to try to dive into it a bit. And I started writing something up. I talked to Elizabeth Hughes, my boss, this morning about it, or yesterday, no, this morning. And I'll probably be turning it into a technical memo. So I'm not sure about the process here and who should look at it first, but probably
Yeah.
we can all talk tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne. Gosh.
Good. All right.
I
Till
think that
tomorrow.
if I just can add, I think that speaks to the gist of what, in my mind, the commission needs to do, which is really clearly articulate what's the priority.
Right.
And even if it's just bullets, we need a consensus on priority.
Yep.
And
By the-
then we can, pick and pull and bulletize and organize all of this material that exists in, between 2013 and blah, 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 and what Heritage Strategies has done. But the commission really needs to.
Well, excuse my ignorance, Lauren, but
Yeah.
does that mean economic development, or does that mean housing, or does that mean cultural?
It means yes is the answer. What's the biggest? I mean, we've talked about mansionization. We've talked
Right.
about supporting the Historic District Commission, you know, with more information. We've talked about West Concord. What does that mean? Is it, you know, we've talked about single property local historic districts. We've talked about neighborhood conservation districts.
Right.
You know, it's a big list, but what's the priority?
Right.
Yep. Well, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. No,
I
no.
get excited about this.
Oh, well,
Um,
we're so glad you are on
Yeah.
it.
Goodness, you do.
Amen.
Oh,
Moving on to other business. I forgot Nancy Frisella Lee.
Hi,
We have a slot for you for the
I'll just make
tercentenary.
this quick. And can you share the slides that I sent you? There's just a couple.
Yes, give me a second. Maybe
So
not-
I'll just start talking while she's looking for those. So I have known for a while that, is everyone familiar with the little oval signs that are above some of our street signs? Lauren, do you know what I'm
I
talking about?
think so. Yeah.
So they're about, okay, so I'll just give you a backup. In 1995.
Yeah.
Okay, this photo is from a newspaper clipping. That's March 1995. And that's when the first of these little oval markers were put up. So that's why I showed you that, because that's the history, that it was in 1995. And what they intended to do was to have this an ongoing thing. And they wanted it to cover not only street signs, but railroad beds, bridges, and cemeteries. That part never took off. And at the same time, in 1995, because I went back and looked at the annual town report, they also revived the historic house marker program, which we all know about. And that was launched, which I forgot about, that was launched at the bicentennial, for the bicentennial in 1975. So that was kind of an interesting way that they made their mark on that celebration. So then they revived that in 1995 and wanted to just reinvigorate it. So if you could go to the next slide. So after I did while I was doing this tercentenary marker project and looking for different categories of markers, there are very few, we identify that there are very few markers that relate to African-American history in Concord, but this is one of them, and it's on Bristers Hill Road, and it's incorrect. And I've known this, but because the tercentenary marker project got so weighed down, I kind of put this aside. Maybe I shouldn't have, but it is coming up again. And Joe Palumbo mentioned it in a public talk. And he said, yeah, we want this down by April 19th. And I thought I better bring this to the committee and do something about it. It's very straightforward. Scipio Brister, it says, Scipio Brister, slave freed before 1772, lived here near here. And that is not true. There was a Scipio Brister, but it should really, if it was correct, it should have said Brister Freeman.
Yeah.
Here. So that's the first mistake. Yeah, so that's it. And the date that he was freed is a little bit up in the air, so that would be incorrect. So Mike, and also I'll point out Bristers Hill is actually, there's a punctuation mistake. It should be Bristers with a comma, Hill.
Apostrophe.
Sorry, apostrophe, right. Although, people would point out that he never really owned the land there, but that's, they still named that road after him. So this should just come down. And if you go to the next slide.
Yeah, yeah.
The next slide, I'm just showing that this was something that came up right before I joined this Squaw Sachem's Trail private way. The neighbors came to the commission and pointed out that Squaw Sachem is an offensive term. And now we refer to this person who's Squaw Sachem, whose identity has never been identified. First of all, we have another sign at Egg Rock says she lived here. Well, she never lived here. She was involved with the land transaction negotiations, but her name sadly has never been rediscovered. So now other people in other towns where she also is involved in their history, they refer to her as the Sonsqua
Of Mystic.
of Mystic. Yes, exactly. The
But
Sonsqua.
you know,
Very
I thought,
complicated.
is this a new picture? Because this was
Oh.
changed.
No,
officially.
that's why I'm showing the next slide. I'm just
Oh.
showing that there was a precedent for removing the sign. And this is what so that's what it looks like now. So so what I wanted to say is I don't remember, Melissa, what is our protocol? Do we need to just give a recommendation for its removal and pass it on to the select board? What if we want to remove this, how does it get done?
I don't know why we can't just reach out to the DPW.
Directly.
Yeah, let's not make a big deal out of it. Just go to Alan and ask to have, at the very least, to have the one removed, the Scipio Brister down, because we do know that that's incorrect.
Right.
And then a request to have the other one corrected with an apostrophe.
Yeah.
And rather than going through a big hoo-ha.
Yeah, I could, Nancy, I could just go see them with the correct.
That would be great, because I don't know how hard they are to take out. Is it just like a snip?
Well, I think it's a cost, you know, they'd have to fabricate the sign again, the Bristers Hill.
Yeah.
Unless
I'm more worried about the oval sign. That I think would be good to get rid of so that people come to us and say, we didn't do anything about it. That the other sign is the next problem that could be done at another time.
yeah, okay, well,
Yes.
Yeah, Nancy, I can meet with you and for the correct verbiage, and then I can just go tell them.
Okay, I just think, and the other thing that I wanted to mention, since we're on this topic, is that, you know, there are these signs there are about 20 of them, and some of them are okay, but others are really dirty and cracked and hard to read. So, you know, it might be that in the spring we have a review of all of them and have another discussion about what we want to do, whether we're going to just let them continue to deteriorate or do something about them.
good idea.
We could do that. We could put a line item and when the meeting in March or April and then have an action item at the end of it. So,
There's Nancy.
yeah. We could do it. Who's got Lauren?
I will defer to my colleagues who had their hands up before me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Doug?
Doug and then Nancy, I think.
Are you against the signs in general or just the ones that need to be corrected? Because I think they're nice. I mean, if somebody just casually walks by, they learn something and they get a lot more perspective. Of course, it's nice if it's correct, but and we want it to be
I have absolutely no problem with them. It's just that some of them that are, I mean, this 1995, that's, 25, 35 years, they're 35 years old. So I think in the spring, when I can just look at some of them and see, I'll drive around and take a second look and see which ones maybe, because I don't know how easy it would be to replace them just, but we could talk about whether we wanted to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Nancy Nelson?
So I apologize to everybody for totally spacing out on this meeting. Melissa's had more Zoom meetings today than I even thought about, so I have no real excuse. What I worry about with taking down, removing all these things goes back to a comment that Bruce Curlis said when he was with us talking about the historic preservation plan. And he said, taking down those signs removes the only reference to us in the whole town. And beyond that, here we sit, the historical commission, thinking about taking down other towns without any consultation.
But that's not what Nancy's talking
Well,
about.
no, but I know she's talking about facts.
Correcting.
But
Maybe
we're not talking about correcting things that are a problem for anybody but us.
Well, but Skippy.
Right here,
wait a minute,
right here.
But that is factually wrong.
Well, people debate facts all the time.
Brewster's Freeman, I mean, I think most.
Well, I think that's less controversial, but I think some of the earlier signs, I don't know that we can say with certainty and about a lot of what we don't know. Anyway, that, I mean, Squaw Sachem Trail, I take it, is pretty well regarded as a non-helpful phrase or title these days. But anyway, I'm still pushing for some collaboration with Native people before we start taking them.
Well,
Or
this,
changing.
well, I want to say a couple of things, and we're going to talk about the tercentenary signs next. So we
Oh, okay.
but this is just about this one sign, which is incorrect. And what you're raising is true, is that do we then, we could replace it with, but there is a marker on Brister's Hill relating to Brister Freeman, although it's in the woods, right? So it's not visible on a street sign. So you're right. We're eliminating something that refers to our African American history. I don't know. Again, these things are made on templates. They're probably not expensive to remake. I mean, we
Probably
could
not.
we could consider fixing it, but I think we should postpone that discussion until the spring, whether it would be replaced. But Joe Palumbo he gave this public talk to Historic Boston's earlier this week, and at the end of the talk, he mentioned this, and I thought, and he clearly said, I'm going to have this removed before April 19th. And I thought, I want the Historical Commission to be responsible, and we're the ones to put the signs up. So
I agree. I agree with that. And I agree with the fuller discussion about it. And Joe is not the be all end all for political properness or whatever we want to call, or historical properness, probably. I wouldn't think. I'm just urging caution.
For facilities. Anne? Anne?
I think Lauren had her hand up too.
Oh,
My thought here is that I think, again, I go back to the preservation plan. I think it would be great to have a town-wide historical marker program or something that, particularly because one of the recommendations in the plan is, recognition of, unheard voices and indigenous peoples. And, there's a lot that, we're talking about related to, these untold stories, I guess, what we're saying. So, I think you have a short-term issue with some incorrect information, right? But maybe we can have a longer-term strategy for what are the stories that need to be identified in Concord that haven't been identified, and is there a way to do that? I mean, I'm not a big clutter the world up with signs person, frankly.
And landscape architect.
But there are examples around the world of places that have noted important events or people or places that really are kind of, oh, really? Wow. Are really helpful.
well,
And
yeah, Lauren,
you'd want it aesthetic, you'd want it compatible with the character of Concord, and, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just my 2 cents. In other words, what I think we need is a sign plan.
well, I completely agree. And I don't know if you know, I started this tercentenary marker plan, and I'll sit down and talk to you about that separately someday. Background, because there's a lot there. But
Right.
I spent so long, and then the process took a turn that wasn't good. And I'll just explain that to you later. But then I started a whole survey of all the town's markers and monuments. And, I have it on my computer, but I've just been bombarded with other things. And I also got kind of discouraged because of some of the politics in town. So
Hmm.
I stopped working on it, but I'm always looking at it and I'm always adding things to it, but slowly. Because I just want it to be a plan. So there have been there's lots and lots of talks about signs around town. And I'll fill you in about that. And this is central to what the Permanent Memorials Subcommittee is trying to do, and it's all tied up with that. And I'm going to keep talking about this with the next issue. After we finish this, I'm going to go on and tell you some more things. But Anne, did you want to say something?
Sure, yes. Okay, so in my previous job, I worked on a number of sign projects and interpretive projects. Obviously, I worked at a museum. You know, it took years to develop these programs with specialists, both in terms of design, interpretation, education, et cetera, et cetera. And so not only did I work on interior interpretive panels and wayfinding signs, but also out in the landscape, the 138 acres of Olmsted designed landscape. And finally, I worked on a project, the citywide wayfinding project for the city of Waltham. So I learned a lot from some really great people on, you know, sign systems, including Sasaki, actually. They did the citywide signage system for Waltham.
Oh.
So, right, so today, the oval markers, that wouldn't be a project that anyone would take on today. You know, kudos to the people who did this in the
Right.
1990s. But, you know, there are standards, right?
Right. So that was a dated project. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, in many levels. So I've heard that it presents safety issues because
I've
they're really interpretive signs, but geared toward vehicular, you know, people who are driving, not pedestrians.
Yeah.
Right? So typically you wouldn't mix up,
I mean, it's distracting.
it's distracting, right? So the street sign, like the people in the fire department need to get to where they need to get as quickly as they can.
Right.
And if there are mixed messages, that delays, you know, first responders. So, you know, it's a real like safety issue. So, and it's distracting to drivers. The way that it's set up at the top of the sign above the wayfinding sign, the road sign, means that it is directed again to cars and drivers, not to pedestrians.
Mm.
The placement is wrong. The size of the font is wrong.
Yeah.
And so from a wayfinding point of view, it's a disaster. From an
Okay.
interpretive point of view, it's also not good, because when you do interpretive planning, you focus in on, you know, we got an NEH grant, right? National Endowment for the Humanities, that brought in professionals and scholars and educators to, you know, think about themes and what are the big themes you want people to take away from their visit, right?
Mhm.
And then you weave those themes into your interpretation. You see what historic resources really support the themes, and you focus in on those. Whereas these signs, that's one of those things where they're sort of telling you everything. And it's distracting because it doesn't tell you what is actually most important, right?
Mm. Yeah. It's like the house signs that we talk about, right? What's the most important fact about that? There's a lot that you can put on these little signs.
Yeah, right.
I got it.
And I will also say,
Suggesting, should we just have, like, in the future plan to have one meeting, have all these signs and what should we do?
Right, so I was thinking, in the interpretive planning, not the interpretive plan, the vision planning project, you know, this is one of those existing projects that does need.
This is in there. I noticed that. Yeah.
Right. So do we want to do it now as part of our preservation planning project? And have like one day or, you know, an hour to just focus in on it? Or you know, do we want to just put it in the plan and get to it when we get to it? So that's something we could talk about tomorrow or.
Yeah,
work
mean,
on that today.
my feeling is, Nancy, when you come back from your trip, you know, this is February, probably the beginning of March, we could sit in and do something.
I mean, there's a lot going on with April 19th, so.
Yeah,
I was
right.
just thinking this one, you know, I knew it was wrong and it's been on my, you know, plan to just bring it up and I just, you know, didn't have the
No.
bandwidth to it. I
It has
thought-
come up before and not just in this environment, but I have heard about it. So Joe wasn't the first one to
No,
point
I
it
know,
out.
right. I know other people know
People-
about it. Everyone, many people know about it.
Many people know about it and we just,
Yeah. So, okay.
Yep, so we could address it.
Okay, let me just quickly, I don't want to spend a lot of time. I just wanted to give you an update on the tercentenary markers. Art, just to remind you, ours came down January 2023, and I have been sort of I keep paying attention. I keep looking at online and wondering if other towns are paying attention to these. And I wanted to let you know that in October, the Sudbury Historical Commission voted to take their five signs down. They had started this before not started, but what's her name?
Anyway,
This woman, Katina Fontes of Athena Education in Sudbury, that she had a whole symposium about this one day that I went to. Anne was there too. And so Sudbury has been working on it for a long time and it's gone back and forth. Well, finally, she actually had a copy of my report and gave it to them. And I listened to a recording of their meeting and they referenced that and they referenced what Concord did. And so they finally, just the end of October, so now it's passed on to their select board. So we'll see where they go with that. But I liked some of the interesting comments that they made. Our conclusion got a little bit messy because of what happened with someone coming in and complaining about it, apparently. But they made a really very clear statement that really this is something that the state, all the tercentenary signs really need to be reviewed statewide by a state organization. It shouldn't be really, it's too messy for each town to to deal with this. So I like that conclusion. There's another town, Gloucester. There's someone there who studied them, and a Native American person weighed in, historian weighed in, and I have a printout of that where she actually took their markers, the inscriptions on their markers, and made proposals for alternative inscriptions, which was really good. And it's just interesting. So I'm keeping record of all these things. I just wanted to let you know that I'm keeping up with that. And it's really interesting that what Sudbury is doing. Yeah, and the third thing about that is in this last year, I wrote 3 emails to our deputy town manager, Megan Zamudo, saying that just as an individual, not as a member of the commission, I said, I'm really concerned because these markers could. Well, first of all, there was a meeting after the markers were taken down. She said she was going to schedule a meeting where we were going to talk about the future of our markers because they're historical objects, and we thought hope that maybe a museum would take them, or some public building where guides could use them as as an interpretation lesson. And she canceled that meeting and said she would reschedule it, and she never did. And so I wrote to her saying, are you going to reschedule it? She ignored that. I wrote to her again and I said, and this was genuine. I said, I'm really worried because the markers were taken and put into storage by DPW. And I've worked in museums where things get lost. And I've been with curators who are looking through, oh, look what I found.
Yeah.
And I wrote to her and I said, these are big and they've recently been taken down, but I really am concerned that they're being safely stored and that we just don't lose sight of them. And someone, thinks, oh, they've been forgotten about. And then someone walks away. That got her attention. And she did write back and she said, no, they're safely stored. But that's her word. And I just want some more. I think the historical commission should follow up, because when we voted to take them down, we voted with the provision that there was follow-up, done, and that has not been done. So I think that we should hold the town to that. You know, the town, look, has a lot of other things going on. I don't want to make this a big deal, but I do want to make them pay attention to things that we decide. And, you know, I think the markers should not just be forgotten about. So I'm thinking that maybe we could write a letter to them and just say that we just want confirmation that the signs are being stored, and what do you have in mind to do with them in the future, or are you just happy to have them sit there?
Yeah. Nancy, I'll take that on as an action item. I'll get together with Ann.
Great.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll get you an answer. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on that? Any questions for Nancy Fasal-Ali? Okay. Moving on. Any other business? Melissa?
The minutes.
Just the minutes, right? Historic Preservation Planning minutes from November, January 2025 and January 24th, 2025. So it's November 14th, January 17th, and January 24th. And the regular meeting minutes from June 13th, August 8th, and September 12th. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to go through them or find any discrepancies, comments.
Well, I read through them, and as far as I know, they're fine, but I mean, some of them are kind of old and I honestly don't remember. They looked fine.
Yeah, I think I looked a while ago.
I mean, I
but
wasn't.
didn't see anything troubling.
Okay.
And Anne, are you still having somebody that does these minutes for you? Because for an awful long time, they've all been very compact and concise, which I thought was a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think they read pretty well, frankly.
Yeah, very.
The town
Do,
isn't sending them out anymore, but we have another staff person, so she's helped pitch in to help catch things up.
Yeah, it looks like we're catching up. I'm really happy about that.
Lauren?
Yeah, I think they're great.
Mhm.
I think what they do is they get to the gist of the discussion
Yeah.
without getting too bogged down in the details.
Yep.
And it's not a transcript. If you
Yes.
see the transcript, you can hear the recording, right? So thank you. I had one question, and it relates to the public meeting about the historic preservation plan.
Yeah.
And it's a question. And it was one of emerging recommendations included extending demolition delays for National Register eligible properties.
Oh, no, that's not right. And
That doesn't sound right to me.
Oh,
Good catch.
Because if we do that, then we won't be doing anything. I mean, you know what I mean? Particularly in light of what we're hearing from MHC about who makes the determination about what's eligible, et cetera. So I think that should be revised to say emerging recommendations included extending demolition delay.
period.
The demolition delay period.
Yeah.
Period.
Period.
And-
Yeah. Good
In
catch.
fact, yeah. Well, that one was of particular interest to me because it captures the gist of the discussion during the public meeting. So to me, that was the most important of the minutes. So that was it for me.
And in your feedback, I think on the meeting of the 17th, I used quite a lot too. So I hope that's okay.
Oh, great.
Given that, Alan, are you looking for a sweeping,
I'm looking for a motion to accept the minutes of the six dates as listed.
I so move.
I second.
As amended. As amended.
As amended, that would be the
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
11/14/24, right? 11/14
Mhm.
public
Yeah.
meeting as amended.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
All in favor? Melissa,
I,
Lauren,
Aye.
Michael, Doug,
I,
Nancy?
no.
Nancy?
Yeah, I vote twice.
Okay, and I vote aye. So opposed? The ayes have it. So the meetings are officially adopted.
Okay.
And I think that's it, unless there's anything else. I'll call the meeting of February 6th, 2025 adjourned.